In your process of reading, what you find is your area is not being represented. Means I do not see the Biredaju or the Kancho in my stories. I do not find my Gundruk and my Sinki or my Kinema in my stories. And then you start feeling that these stories are not telling stories of my place, of my people. It's not, as I said, when you're sending a story, you're sending a whole ecosystem. What we wear, what we eat, what are the festivals that this
Celebrate.
one, no? Celebrate. So there's a thing where the tea garden owner tells I bought you some clothes for Durga Puja, and this guy says, "Sir, it's Dasai." So with the story, even that goes.
Yeah.
So these are things that small things, but it's very important for us. अनि कतिवटा कुरा चाहिँ हामीले छोडिदिनु पर्छ. जस्तो suppose there's a word called ambo, you leave it as ambo, no? If there's a word called height, you leave it as height in English. Leave it. त्यतिकै छोडिदियो. Either you use it or this one. या त बिचारा. Now, how can I say बिचारालाई चाहिँ अब poor soul भन्दा पनि हुन्छ कि God forsaken soul पनि हुन्छ. Leave it as bichara. They will learn it. Whoever is reading it. After that word repeats 2 or 3 times in the book, they will know what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Or they'll go to the Google and find it out. There's no problem with that. But you can leave some words like that.
Welcome to Point of Podcast Artists, brought to you by Artsy Productions in collaboration with Summed Up and Poa Creatives. Today's episode is powered by Eklabya Institute of Management, one of the premier hospitality institutes in Siliguri, providing hospitality excellence since 2015. They are now offering a 2-month barista course. For further details, click the link given below. Alright, hello and welcome to Point of Podcast, episode 3, where we are in conversation with Mr. Satyadeep Chhetri today. And this is episode 3 and we are Point of Podcast. We've been having interesting conversations with some interesting people, and here we are with another very interesting person today. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Before we begin, Mr. Satyadeep Chhetri is a writer, an academician, and an all-round very nice and interesting person to talk to. So thank you so once more for being with us today. For the uninitiated, for those who might not know, so could you maybe give us an introduction to who is Satyadeep Chhetri?
Well, that's a very tough question. I've been trying to discover myself for a couple of years. And it's always a process of discovery, I think that thing ends when you die or when you leave this world. So, well, I'm a homegrown Siliguri guy. Studied here and then went on to do my PhD, got a job. I've been teaching for the last 24 years. Of course, I teach chemistry, which has nothing to do with my writing side.
Yeah.
But then the interests have always been there, and reading, of course. Often I used to go for treks, and and then what? Oh yeah, of course, I do quizzing, professional quiz master. So I mean, it's like all mixed up. Of course, a civil society member. I used to run my own show once upon a time. So many things. It keeps happening.
Yes, so if we got anything from it, it's that sir is a very eclectic person, a person with hands in a lot of different pies. But yeah, and that's what makes him so interesting. So, and you touched upon something which was very interesting for me, especially when I first got to know you, which was that, you're a writer, right? And that's how actually I got to know of you. You've written Gorkhaland Diaries, you've written Sikkim a Democracy, you're working on more projects. I believe we'll talk about them later on in the show. But you're a writer, but then the path you have taken to this journey, to this destination of yours, a journey which still continues, has been maybe a bit unconventional, if I may say so.
Yes, basically, to write, you have to read a lot. I mean, read anything and everything under the sun. But then, as a young kid, we grew up with books like Enid Blyton, Famous Five,
Secret Seven.
Secret Seven. Then graduated to Hardy Boys, and a few of the Nancy Drews, of course. Then you grow up, and then you read Loden Lama, Sudden. So when you grow up, these are the memories of childhood that you have, and in this process, as you go further in life, then your reading becomes even more stronger, maybe more intense. Uh, Slowly, the whole English writing community in India started increasing, slowly. With the with 2000, the year 2000, 2001, to many new writers like even Chetan Bhagat, I shouldn't even, they started coming up. But then there were writers like Arundhati Roy, you have writers like Amitav Ghosh, very serious English writing. And when you, in your process of reading, what you find is your area is not being represented. Means I do not see the, the Bire Daju or the Kancho in my stories. I do not find my Gundruk and my Sinki or my Kinema in my stories. And then you start feeling that these stories are not telling stories of my place, of my people. Of course, there's a lot of things that was there already. It is there in, say, the Nepali language, but English ma chai yo representative bhako thiena. So what do you do then? Either you wait for them to write, or you start.
Or you
writing
do
your
it
own.
yourself.
Yeah. So then, with this whole reading community, with a lot of youngsters from our area growing and wanting to read more and more books, it's not that I have not given up. I have not given up reading the other books. I do still read. I'm waiting for Until August to come. I think it's releasing 12th March, and that is Marquez's last book. So you keep reading Mario Vargas Llosa, you keep reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez, you keep reading Salman Rushdie, you keep reading one of my favorite, of course, is Murakami, Haruki Murakami, and Philip Roth. So you keep reading these books, but where are my people? And that is where this whole journey started. And I used to keep writing for, say, national and international websites and magazines, and I used to write columns for the daily English newspaper called Sikkim Express. And now there was this one. But then that was limited to a certain area. It was still not going out. And that is where I said that I'm done with writing short things, now let's write something big. And that is how it all happened.
That's how the journey started for you. The need to tell stories.
Tell our stories in our way. That's more important.
Yeah, that's very important. Because I remember, when you were talking about Khaimero, Gundruk, and Kinema, I remember Enid Blyton, of course, our childhood mother. It's everyone's gateway into literature. And I remember reading the Famous Five books, and there were passages where the Famous Five, these friends, they would get together and they would eat. And when they ate, it was always sandwiches and tomatoes with salt on it. And me being a kid, I would always want to copy the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But then again, when you start to maybe think to yourself, you're like, but that's not the food that I am used to. My food is something else. So, having something to relate to, stories to relate to is, I think, very important for us. And that's what, got your journey started as well. And I think, Tape, you are also, like you said, you're a chemistry student.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how does that work? Because, you go from chemistry to completely, and you shift a whole gear. You don't just shift a gear, you don't just shift a lane, you decide to go a completely different road to literature. How do you do that?
I don't know whether I should call my books literature, in the strictest of the literature sense. But yes, this I can say is that chemistry, of course, has always been my first love because that's my bread and butter. It's not only my bread and butter; it was my passion. Otherwise, I wouldn't have, spent so many years studying chemistry. Uh, but with chemistry also went many things. Like I was still reading, I was still preparing for my competitive exams, and you know how everyone does. I mean, you prepare for this exam, that exam. I passed many of them, but then when you when you pass net and all that, and then you know that which profession you are headed to. So that has always been there. My passion for chemistry uh, has not diminished. I mean, I would still love to tell, and even in my chemistry class, I go and tell stories sometimes, and stories of scientists maybe, sometimes, and their story, their, the rigor that they went through, from those sooty cubby holes down there somewhere in the attic or somewhere down there in the storeroom. They started their laboratories, and this is how we know chemistry. So that thing stays. But there is this other part where we are part of this whole ecosystem, where you are seeing people still lining up to get a tin of water in Darjeeling. People still buy water, you know. Or you suddenly hear a story of how someone went to rescue his calf, which was there in Gaucharan and might have just slipped off the mountain and it's dead. Or maybe someone living near the river bank has been swept off by the Teesta. So these are stories. And why was he there? And why did he go? What were his pangs of going? And what is the life that he's been leading? We are in the 21st century. We are talking digital like this, but then there are a host of people who are still in a different world. And then you start feeling that why are our stories not reaching them? In my book I have written, if a train could reach Darjeeling 150 years back, what stops water to fall through the taps? So these are questions that people don't know. They know Darjeeling as Darjeeling tea. I don't know, what do they call that? Champagne of tea or something like that. Something like that. Champagne of the East or something like that. So they know about this classic, view of the Kanchenjunga. But what happens to those people who are staying in this base of Kanchenjunga? The story is still not written. And we wait for the stories. Other places, our writers are exploring, are writing, but it's still not happening. So that is what I often feel. केही चाहिँ लेख्नु पर्यो नि हाम्रो हिस्ट्री, हाम्रो जग्गा. It shouldn't just be, Andolan. It should be something else. But of course, I started a book with the Andolan, but then there are other things also in the book which I think if a person reads it, they'll know that it's not, as I said, when you're sending a story, you're sending a whole ecosystem, what we wear, what we eat, what are the festivals that we, celebrate. So there's a thing where one of the characters says, the tea garden owner tells I bought you some clothes for Durga Puja, and this guy says, sir, it's Dasai. So with the story, even that goes.
Yeah.
So these are things that, small things, but it's very important for us, for the global community to understand.
Yeah, also it's representation.
Yes.
Representation of who
even
we are.
There.
Yeah. I think that's very important. So topic, you've spoken of how this journey started with a love for telling stories, and I came across this very interesting quote, and it suddenly came to mind when I was listening to you talk. And this quote, I'm trying to paraphrase it, so I might mess it up, but then the overall gist of the quote is that stories are essential to who we are, because they are as essential as opposable thumbs. Because opposable thumbs were very important for evolution. Opposable thumbs allowed you to hold on to branches, and that helped in evolution, but stories allow us to hold on to who we are. And as you were speaking, this quote suddenly came to mind about the importance of stories. It allows us to keep track of who we are, what you know are we, what are we, because I was reading your website, Satyadeep Chhetri, and in that website, in the intro section, you've gone into a whole tangent. I found that very interesting. By the way, you've gone into a whole tangent about who am I, who is Satyadeep Chhetri, and it was very interesting that ultimately what you come to is the idea of your story. Gives you a glimpse of who you are, right? So, you know, since stories are so important to you, to your expression, and even in your place of work, how do these stories come to you? What is your process?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, must be divine intervention. But yes, I'm a very social person. Like, I'll be going to Morrow and Bia and birthday parties very less, but yeah. And then and sometimes I take break just to meet people on the road. When I'm getting worked up, I take a taxi instead of my car just to sit and listen to people what they're talking. Gantok, where I work and where I stay. Uh, Sometimes I just take the taxi just to listen to what they're talking, and then try and if there's something interesting, I may just turn and say, "Yo, kyo, tabli ke badnu bhako? Esto मैले बुझिन," and all that, and they'll explain, and that stays. So I don't know when I'll use it. It's not that I'll use it immediately, but it just goes into my memory hard drive. I mean, the brain ko hard drive, and brain's got a dinosaur's memory. So and then I've got a very interesting set of friends who will be cracking jokes, and all their jokes are actually social jokes. Social jokes in the sense ती भइरहेको त्यतै भइरहेको घटनाहरूको माथि. So yeah, these stories travel, and then you will find them represented in my books. But saying that, you picked up, you missed that one point. I mean, you were speaking and then slowly you moved out, but I'll catch up from there. कि हाम्रो कथा हामीले जब लेख्छौँ, when we write, what are, like, how do this happen, and what misrepresentations happen. Like both my books, if I say, and there's one which is still not, this one, we've stopped the publication of that book. How many of us, so 2017 मा जब आन्दोलन भयो, that massive आन्दोलन, so there were lots of people on the road. So we won Gorkhaland and all that, Candle March and all that. Then the shootouts happened. So I was in one of those processions, and I happened to meet a lot of youngsters, and then I asked them, so what do you know about the 86 को आन्दोलन? And they says that यस्तो भएको थियो अरे, यस्तो भएको थियो अरे, and everything stopped at the अरे. And then I asked them that why are we asking? Oh, हाम्रो identity. And then no answer. Do you know how it happened, and what was the process? And what were the stories going on during that time? And I mean, they were like, we don't know. And this is just 30 years back, So how can our memories forget the lives of so many people lost? That too, when Darjeeling Kalimpong was one district, about 3,000 people, unofficially. If you see my second book, Sikkim from Autocracy to Half Democracy, so there are stories which talk about, from the side of the Sikkim royalty. There are stories which speaks about, written by lots of people, about how the raw and the intelligence agencies and the military got together to take over Sikkim. So there are two parts of the story. But what we lost in those stories are, so what were the common people doing? Why were those 30,000 people or 40,000 people on the streets of Gantok asking for democracy? And what was the narratives that were going on? So that is captured with a lot of new documents. So I did not, and there was always this small gaps in the stories. This happened, and then suddenly, it can't just happen suddenly. Democracy like India, there was places like Nepal and Bhutan, why Sikkim, and what were these what were these parallel events that were happening globally, and what was happening in, say, in the corridors of power in Delhi. What were the papers being generated? I mean, papers in the sense those documents. Uh, so we always come to know about something called a secret document. You know? Many of the books that have been written on Sikkim, they'll talk about there was a secret document which was signed, but nobody talked what it was. So it took me a little of research, and I tried to find out what it was, and finally I got that document. And it looks similar to the 8th May Agreement, which everybody talks about, which is in public domain. But the secret document, you will find it first time in my book. So that was the precursor to the 8th May Agreement. So these are stories which we need to know. I talked about one more book called Kalobhari, which is, I've stopped the publication for some reasons. I mean, some editing, etc. There's some mistakes out there. How many people know about Kalobhari? Nobody. I mean, you ask people in Darjeeling and Siliguri, the older generation will say, yes, something like that happened, which was forced labor to Tibet. People had to carry, I mean, I remember there was one article where even a car was taken on their backs to, I mean, they'd broken up a car and reassembled in Lhasa. But our people carried through the Jalep Pass. So where are the stories? And there are thousands of stories like this spread across our place. And I did not know that Muhammad Ali Jinnah met his wife for the first time in Darjeeling. I did not know that the last Chogyal met his American wife in our area. So these are stories that we need to say, and these are world-shaking stories. So Darjeeling and Kalimpong is also important for this. So Garum na हामी हाम्रो stories. If you cannot get it through non-fiction, you can get it through a fiction route. So just to keep it for eternity. That's what.
How do you see yourself then, sir? Now, since you were talking about if you can't do it through the non-fiction route, doing it through fiction, so do you see yourself as strictly a particular type of writer, or are there other maybe sensibilities that are guiding you towards a particular style?
Nothing like that in particular, but let us not forget that we reside in an area which is geopolitically very, very sensitive. So when you are writing non-fiction also, you have to be very careful. Your words have to be measured. You have to exactly know what you are writing, because that may have international repercussions. Not only national, but international repercussions. Fiction gives you a way out. If someone asks you, you can just say it's a fiction.
Certain leeway.
Yeah. You get a small passage where you can move out. Another part is what I have understood over the last few years of staying with and talking to a lot of publishers, etc. And they always say that, where are our Nepali stories? I said, yeah, it's there in the literature, and it's very rich. I salute all those people who've written this huge Nepali, resource literature that they've written. But how many are getting translated? If you count, you will see I.B. Rai in translation, a few books from Sahitya Academy, just a few, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 short stories collections. Then you will see some new books that have been translated recently. Other than that, where is our representation? So I always tell the new generation, if you've got a book which you liked in Nepali, please translate that into English and let it go. People like this year's Manoranjan Brepari, he had written it long time back, and then this goes on to win the JCB. The international fiction for this award from UK, what's that? Booker, Gitanjali Shri. It's a Hindi book, Ret Samadhi, being translated. So there is this huge ocean of writings in regional languages, which now has to be translated into English.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you across, but I want to talk about this, which is, on the ride over as well, we were talking about the importance of translation when it comes to regional work. right? So, you know, could you maybe go into how important, why is translation so important? You're already talking about it, but you know, maybe sort of give the audience as well a glimpse into why exactly is it that translation is so important? Why are, you know, we harping so much nowadays on the importance of translation?
Yes, because our stories are there. English, though we say it's a English of it's a language of communication. It's a second language for us. Though we studied in school as first language, going to English medium school, but घरमा आएर त हामी नेपाली नै बोल्छ नि Bengali person goes home and speaks in Bengali, that still is first. I still consider the regional language as the mother tongue, as the first language. A child learns the first language at home, whichever language the people at home are speaking. Now, so the essence, the real essence of writing, especially for this Indian subcontinent, or be it even Pakistan or Bangladesh or Southeast Asia, if you're seeing right now, from wonderful literature coming out from Indonesia, from Vietnam, from Cambodia, you know, writings, very, very strong writing. They wrote it in their own. Haruki Murakami writes in Japanese, right? Gabriela Garcia Marquez wrote in Spanish. So it's not that we are reinventing the wheel. It's just that time to write our regional stories into English, that's all. But it is tough. It's extremely tough, especially the books that were written, say, prior to 2005. Nowadays, with the new crop of writers, new generation, they are writing in a slightly more colloquial Nepali. Writings before 2005 or 2010, even 2010, I think, or the older generation, you know, they wrote in a very strong Nepali, you know, and strong in the sense कि it was not so colloquial. They त अलिकति tough हुन्थ्यो क्या, which of course with तेस्रो आयाम भन्छ, they broke it down, but then still we still find that old writing, and it is actually tough. And then there will be utilizing certain terms which nowadays we don't use, or certain farm instrument, or maybe certain season that they're talking about, or some flower that they're talking about. So you have to actually, and I know because right now I'm doing a project of translating, but I know, as I told you in the car also, there was one page, I think I wrote it 13 times before I said I'm going to. So I was still not happy with that because the essence was not coming. के भन्नु खोज्दैछ र के अनि कतिवटा कुरा चाहिँ हामीले छोडिदिनु पर्छ. जस्तो suppose there's a word called ambo, you leave it as ambo, no? If there's a word called height, you leave it as height in English. Leave it. त्यतिकै छोडिदियो. Either you use it or this one. यहाँ त बिचारा. Now, how can I say बिचारालाई चाहिँ अब poor soul भन्दा पनि हुन्छ कि God forsaken soul पनि हुन्छ. Leave it as बिचारा. They will learn it. Whoever is reading it, after that word repeats 2 or 3 times in the book, they will know what it is. Okay, or they'll go to the Google and find it out. There's no problem with that, but you can leave some words like that. So even translation has become slightly more easier. Yeah, and but yes, it is, as I said, it is extremely tough because you have to understand the book. मान्छेहरू चाहिँ अहिले के गर्छ भने ट्रान्सलेसन गरौँ भन्छ, they start from
Just
there. I think you have to
superficial.
I think you have to read the text twice or thrice, at least twice or thrice, before you actually go into the nitty-gritties of translating. And then I also have understood that our regional literature is so rich and so onomatopoeic, you know, that it's a chiso, you know. So now you got to understand how you're going to put that point through to the English reading public who's going to read your book. So these are tough, but yes, it is like really interesting, and then you also rediscover your own language. So my second language was Hindi in school, but then reading Nepali is another, you know, so as I said, you keep changing.
And also very vital, very important, I think, because it also allows for, you know, these regional stories to reach a wider audience.
Exactly, that's
I
important.
think that's also something that, you know, we often tend to forget.
So you're not reinventing, you're not inventing, but you are just say maybe you are serving it in a different plate. That's
Allowing more people to consume it. Consume.
Like, I know, you can say consume because it's like pizza coming to India from Italy. I mean, who knew about pizza before Domino's? Supposedly, the common man. So it's like that. Let our celebrity also go out, no? Just like our Momo,
Yeah.
which is international. So it's okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you can do, but I'm getting a seriously strong sense of Momo right now. I don't know if that's wishful fantasy or something, but I'm getting a serious, really nice, warm smell of Momo right now. But yeah, so Tavale, when you've been, one thing I've found very interesting talking to you has been this sort of, you spoke of passion. Chemistry is still your first love. You want to tell stories because you feel this need to. It is something that you're drawn towards, something that you're passionate about, right? So, how important is this passion, this concept, this idea? How important is passion to a writer, an artist, according to you?
Yeah, so there's this term called ikigai. I love this term because people always mistake it for success, which is not, and ikigai is something that makes you happy. Uh, writing is like playing. Four people get together and they start playing cards, or maybe you are practicing billiards. You're focused, and when you are writing, you are so focused that you forget what's happening next door or maybe even in the next room. And that also gives you a type of mental peace to remove or detach you from anything that is worrying you. When you're playing, if you are very agitated, and if you are playing billiards, at a point of time you'll see you've forgotten that, and or pool, your focus is the white ball and the ball with which and that cue in your hand, and you are aiming. It's same like playing carom board. You just forget. त्यस्तो हुन्छ सो त्यसले इमिडिएट रिलिज पनि दिन्छ आफूलाई.
Therapeutic process.
It's actually a therapeutic process. And sometimes people do say that there are mental blocks. हुन्छ mental blocks. हामीलाई हुन्छ. I sat with the story for 7 months. But yeah, I mean, I know how to get out of it, so we can discuss it.
Yeah, getting out of a writer's block.
Yeah.
Writer's block and a creative block. I think because in one of our previous interviews, call back to another episode, but yeah, in one of our previous interviews we talked about the idea of creative block. Yeah? So, how is that? How do you deal with creative block?
Yeah, because this I've been telling to a lot of people, and they think that since my two books came out back to back, that's 22 and 23, they thought that I wrote it in a year. It doesn't happen like that. It takes time, and then you reread, and then make cut out portions which are either objectionable or which you do not like. That's a different thing, or which you think that it may be objectionable, considering that it may not have a reference or something, especially to do with non-fiction. It's true that you do have writer's block. You just don't know where the story is going and how you're going to proceed. But there is one thing that you have to diligently maintain is any time of the day. Whenever, don't force yourself. Like there are few writers I know who actually force themselves in the morning to sit for 2 hours in front of the laptop or whatever notepad they're using. Or there are few who sit in the evening or maybe at night, during the day, sometime. But what they are doing is they're actually practicing writing. If you do not write for 3 months, you lose words. Certain words, एउटा words like 4 किसिमले we can explain, but you will either forget the 2 words, or it'll just slip out. So I have devised a way, 2 ways rather. One is, if I have a writer's block, I translate.
So you're still in touch with
Because you're
the
not
story.
thinking, no? You're not thinking. You're not thinking about the plot. You're just thinking about that line mechanically and emotionally or whatever, sentimentally, how you attach to that. You're just representing that. The second part is nowadays all the phones have this recorder. So whenever you are driving or whenever you are alone and you don't feel like writing and you get a a creative spark. Okay, can I do this? Can I write this? Then suddenly it comes. It's just the back. It happens with people. Just record it. At that time, just put on your phone because phone is always with you. It's an extended arm actually. So just record it and keep it. When you're having that block, open that and start typing and make it into a story. You'll see that within 15 to 20 days your writer's block is gone. This is for sure. And this is tried and tested.
Okay.
I've tested on me.
So that's a Satyadeep Chhetri approved method.
Yes.
You should trademark it. Talking about writer's block and maybe not forcing it got me thinking about this poem. And this is a poem about which I've spoken to different people about it, and different people have a lot of different opinions about it. Charles Bukowski, Don't Do It. I can't remember the exact poem, I was looking for it, but he basically says, if it doesn't come bursting out of you, if keeping it inside you does not burn you, it doesn't feel like it's scratching you from the inside to get out, then don't do it. Don't write.
Yes.
So what do you think about this idea that if it doesn't come out of you, it's not bursting out of you,
Right.
you should just not do it?
Correct. Now there are two parts of this. I'll put it in a slightly different way. What you just said right now about Bukowski is exactly what Arundhati Roy, I remember her interview long time back in NDTV. So with that initial success of The God of Small Things, she was asked, when is the next book? And she answered, she said, like, whenever I have the next story. But
That's one.
it took 16 years for her to come out with the next book.
Yeah.
But did she stop writing? No. In between, she wrote around 6-7 non-fiction. She was always writing. So she did not allow the world to forget that there is someone called Arundhati Roy from the public gaze. If you are writing, you write. If you do not have a story, translate. But you have to be in the writing circuit so that people do not forget you. Because when you start writing and your books are being sold, it's there in the bookstores, people always ask, when is the next book coming? And that's a normal question. And then if you go and say that I don't have another book, they say, Ora,
I'm waiting for a story to strike me.
yeah. And then say after 5 or 7 years you come out with a book. So it's good that you took your 5-7 years to write your next book or 10 years to write your next book. But in between, if you are not there, then you have to again, as I said, reinvent the wheel. Again start looking for publishers, again start talking to them. And even publishers have they are basically, they are very good people who publish books, but they are also business. They are also into business. They also want, so whenever a second book or a third book comes out, the first and the second book also sells together with the third book.
Because of the name.
Yeah. So, what has he done before that? What has he done before that? So, I have bought books. Like I remember someone's second book came out, and I had missed the first book. Usko. When he came for that meet the author like thing, and I was signing the first book, I bought the earlier book also and got it signed.
Okay.
So you are selling 2 books for the publisher, not for yourself, but for your publisher. So you have to take care of a lot of things nowadays. So it's like tough. I mean, so you have to be, and you have to keep writing. Otherwise,
Talking about this idea of always keeping in touch with your writing process. I think it's true for any artistic process also. That you need to constantly be in touch with your art, your craft rather. Otherwise you lose. It's like I think it's also like going to the gym maybe.
Yes, I mean, you know the thing that I said about the mobile thing when you record, hey, यो चाहिँ मैले कहाँबाट सिकेँ भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ I remember watching an old interview of R.D. Burman. And R.D. Burman always used to carry this recorder with him. And wherever, either he's sleeping, and that time the phone थिएन बिचाराको time हैन. So he used to have this recorder even while going to the do while sleeping. Because sometimes he said like I should get up at the dead of the night with a tune. Then you he used to record it. You know? When he's traveling to the studio or traveling by plane or going to a function and all that, he always used to carry that. And that is where I learned this trick. You know, it's just that I write, he makes music. You know? Yes, of course you have to, but together with that you have to keep reading. And reading across genres is, you cannot say that, oh, I'll not touch this book because it is so and so. I forgot to tell you that I used to read even Mills and Boone. Okay, so no problem with that. So Mills and Boone, Sidney Sheldon, Harold Robbins. I mean, name them.
Yeah, some of them are comfort
Alistair
readings.
Alistair MacLean. You know. So these are things that we grew up with. So you have to keep reading.
Nicholas Sparks.
Everything that comes out right now, you have to know what the world is reading, and your liking, not liking is a personal choice. People say that, oh, I dislike that author, but that person does not know when you say dislike an author, the process or the pain that particular person has gone through writing that.
Process of creation.
Process of creation. So people will say, oh, you know, he writes crap. Possibly, for you, but there may be someone who may be swearing by his name or her name.
Right.
So that is what I feel. Nothing in this world which is creative, nothing is crap. It may be personally for you. You know, there are lots of people in the world who will say, oh, I do not do, or you know, I do not watch these type of movies. Don't watch. If the movie has been made, that means there is a huge audience waiting for that movie.
May
So-
not be you, but definitely.
Probably that person has not made it for you. Simple. You know, there are others. So it's just like that.
I think that's, you touched upon something very beautiful, which is sometimes I think we don't do that enough. Respect the process of creation itself. Just take a moment to sit back and appreciate it. This is something that this person has spent a lot of time over. A lot of effort has gone into it. I think that is something that we tend to miss.
So I'll give you an example for this. So there used to be a writer called Surendra Mohan Pathak. You may not be knowing him. Now you will know him. Do you remember those books, that thick books which used to be, which is still being sold in the railway stations? Hindi kitab. So Surendra Mohan Pathak. People said trash. It's pulp fiction. It is this, it is that, Penguin goes to, now, after 30 years, Penguin publishes Surendra Mohan Pathak. Can you believe it? That means what? There are so many people traveling on the road, on the train. Surendra Mohan Pathak's books have been Agent Vinod. I mean, they made a movie out of it, Saif Ali Khan acting. So, I mean, we should take it with a pinch of salt, And there are writers who might have written exquisitely great books, but probably Surendra Mohan Pathak has satiated a lot of, minds or these people's reading, this whole Hindi speaking and Hindi reading group.
This is very interesting because I completely agree with you. We don't respect the artistic process enough, and we also let a variety of external factors
Affect
determine how we look at something.
Yes.
Right. I think especially this time period, I think movies would be a very good example. A movie comes out. Before you watch the movie, there are
Reviews coming
hundreds
out.
of opinions and
Coming out.
reviews about it. And so you've already made up your mind. Okay?
Whether it's good or bad.
This movie is like this. Your movie ramro chaina. And again, it's like based on someone else's reaction. But like you said, that movie actually might speak to you if you give it a chance.
I'll give you an example for this. I have lots of stories. As I said, I keep moving around. So I have a very good friend who's a pretty well known in this area. I'll not take his name. So we were watching recently we were watching a play together, and it was a take on Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare's. And त्यसको 2 दिन अगाडि चाहिँ हामीले मकबेथ हेरेको थिए हिन्दीमा, but it was a take on Macbeth. It's not Macbeth, but with new characters.
This was in Sikkim.
Sikkim, just about the theatre festival which was going on. So then I asked him that, how do you like to do good and all that? And he said, yeah, you thought about जानेको story हो तर मजाले गरेछ है. Then I asked him, so you watched Omkara? And he tells me, त्यो बिरी जलाइले भएको हेरिन किन? Do you know it was take on Othello? होइन होला. And exactly this happened. That बेला चाहिँ the बिरी जलाइले song became famous. And when it became famous, all of his friends said, त्यो बिरी जलाइले types picture नहेरौँ.
Yes.
But
Exactly.
and then I said, go and watch. And then I asked him, did you watch Maqbool? He said, no. I said, go and watch. If you've not watched Othello, then I said, Heather. Then I told him that Maqbool is a take on Macbeth, Heather is a take on Hamlet, and Omkara is on Othello. Then he goes back and watches this film. Then he says, like, thank you very much. So this is how we...
And this is very interesting because Shakespeare himself, Pani Fairy, when in Shakespeare's time, Shakespeare himself was not, a writer for the snobbish elite. He was a writer for the masses. He wrote his plays first and foremost. He wasn't thinking about, I want people to speak about me for 100 years. No, he wanted to make money.
Money, simple.
I want to get more people in the audience.
Big million.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, first and foremost, that's, we tend to, I think, focus too much on, being snobs about art. And it takes us away from the pure, simple joy of appreciating them.
I again remembered my own personal story. So it was around class 11 or 12. So Salman Rushdie, big thing, Midnight Children. Have you read Midnight Children? I said, no, you should read. So the next book fair which came to Siliguri, I went and bought Midnight Children. Okay, that was 90s, I think. And I started reading. 30 page or 40 page down, it was like, it was a torturous journey for me. I left it. Started reading some more books. 98, 99. Again that book peeped out from the bookshelf. I picked it up, started reading. I said, no, I'm not doing this. Keep it back. It was only in 2014 or 15 that I actually read Midnight Children completely. Different time out, that time I picked up just to be in that scene. Like there are lots of people posting Murakami. How many of them have read? And they said, oh, it's like drugs, I don't do Murakami. I said, what are you telling me? For God's sake, this is not drugs. This the peer pressure. Oh, have you read Jojo Moyes or have you read what is that? Tuesdays with Mori. So, अब मान्छेले भन्छ नेपाली फिल्म is not, अरे why not yeah? In my nice moment I will want to watch that movie. के अरे त्यो हाम्रो चारटा छ नि हो एउटा त ब्यान अस्ति गरे नि के अरे कबड्डी I love that movie. Fine, it does not carry all that artistic whatever.
You enjoy
True, that's people used to laugh, when people, what movie did you see? I said, I went and watched Hero Number 1. Yes, I do watch Hero Number 1, but I also watch Raja Babu. I also watch Maqbool. I will also watch Schindler's List. And so we straight away say, oh, Haina. I mean, it's not done.
We become snobs immediately.
भरे मन चाहिँ परिरहेको हुन्छ
Guilty pleasure.
त्यो घरमा गएर चाहिँ हिरो नम्बर 1 त्यो उसमा लगाएर हेरिरहेको हुन्छ
Yeah. We just use the title guilty pleasure.
Yeah. अहिले like lots of people say, oh, what was there in Dawn or Sholay or Amar Akbar Anthony? Come on, yaar. What are we doing now? We are repeating all those stories in a different format. Maybe artistically we are more enabled due to, say, the digital intervention. But कथा त त्यति नै थिएन. So yeah, that's I don't know. I mean, Shakespeare creating those characters 400 years back, it's still, and people say, oh, you all used to watch, during this COVID time, the Indian government that started beaming those Ramayana and Mahabharata, and I told them, Ramayana is being, and then I started watching. I said, what am I watching? I've already done that. But I remember my childhood days when Sundays, no one would be in the streets at 10 o'clock. No one. When Ramayana and Mahabharata used to beam. But nowadays, but that time it was like, for us, it was like great thing.
Exactly. Those were still stories which brought you joy.
Yeah. And you are still writing Ramayana and Mahabharata. Today, lots of books that are being written in India, be it Rupa, be it Harper, be it Penguin, you have all these Brahma stories and Ramayana stories. What are those stories? You are just writing that same story in a different way. That's all. And you're coming out. See the number of books that are coming out. In the last year, you will at least find 50 books which has come from the, some Bhagavad Puran or somewhere from Bhagavad Gita or from Ramayana or from Mahabharata. Maybe they'll pick up one character, but they're still writing those stories. So it is how you represent it, no? What is available. As Star Trek here, I mean, Purano Star Trek. Right? Now we are digitally enabled, no? Our technology has gone up, so we have to understand. We are making the same story.
Yeah. And somehow, very interesting, Star Trek and Star Wars, the Purano series, those are the ones that still remain standing as classics today.
I still have few, पहिला त हामीले कमिक्स भन्थ्यो, आजकल त ग्राफिक नोभल भन्दो रहेछ हो. So I still possess few of them, the old ones, international editions. I still have those with me at home.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean that's what I think Tapele Bandhavani, you touched upon this right now, which is that stories are being told. It's also that there are writers telling these stories, the same stories, maybe different ways of looking at it, and also I think ultimately it boils down to the fact that we must read. First of all, the importance of reading, and we must be open. We must be open to anything. Like not have any sort of preconceived notion or any bias saying that like you said, because there is some song over there.
Yeah, I mean when I wrote that Autocracy to Half Democracy, some guy wrote, how does a professor in chemistry write the history? Because it's slightly historical also, no? That is his freedom. So my only advice would be to go and read the book before you give your. And if you find anything wrong in that, then you can ask me, tell me.
Have a conversation about it.
And it's always good to take criticism.
Constructive criticism.
No. Even if it is destructive criticism, it still helps you. So I know. So when we were doing my PhD, I had around 556 reactions which went wrong. So my guide always used to tell me, so you've learned one more way of not doing this reaction. That's the positive part.
So coming to this, the idea of destructive criticism and constructive criticism is something I think about, some of our audiences watching this also. There might be artists who are or people just trying to do something in their life, and obviously criticism comes with the journey. So how do you deal with it? How do you deal with criticism, be it of any type?
It's okay. I mean, see, if it is something which is, suppose I have done some fundamentally wrong or I have written something fundamentally wrong, then I will take it like, maybe in the next edition more sudharsu. If you put in if you know that whatever you've written and you stand by it, and if there's someone writing against it, doesn't make a difference. For me, I am not a writer also. I don't make my bread and butter this one. But then yes, it takes just about 5 lines in a or 7 lines in a Facebook or Instagram or somewhere. People or Twitter. 120 or 130, 40, 140 words in Twitter.
40.
Twitter to only X. To say that, I mean, if that 140 words or that 5 lines can affect you, then you are in the wrong journey. I think.
You need to develop a thick skin.
No, I will not say the thick skin, but you should be able to convince yourself that whatever I have written or whatever I have created, maybe music also, or maybe a film, this is my version. This is the best I could do. I cannot do beyond this. If you know that, whatever others may say, how does it make a difference? There were times when people were behind Salman Rushdie's head, satanic verses. But he stood by it, no?
Yeah.
Then he was again attacked, about 2 years back, He still stood by it. Physical assault is bad. Verbal the Bible, we are nothing. Prime ministers and film stars, superstars are being trolled. Who are we? It doesn't make a difference. Yeah, that is bad. That is bad. So, Taslima Nasreen.
Especially, I think nowadays, the more open and connected, it's also become quite easy, I think.
Yes, so you have to be very careful as this one. And then you also have a responsibility also. Sometimes you go by the herd syndrome. Don't go by that. Write what your heart, what you feel like. And yes, at times you have to take a risk as a writer. That if you feel strongly about it, and as you said, bursting out of you, write it. There's no problem. There's no at all. There's came then. What else can you do?
But it has to be something that you poured your soul into.
Yes, that is very important. That's very important.
This was whatever you were talking about just now. It also presupposes the fact that if you are going to stand by it, it must be because you have worked
right, and you have put in
hard at it. You have put
2
in the
years,
best.
3 years, yes. You have put in.
That is very
It's not easy to write a book. There's a lot of research that goes in. And if you either you fail in your research. I remember that the Foothills when we had that program, and Dr. Wangil caught up and said your research was okay. So that's so gratifying,
An acknowledgement of the work you did.
Because everything I've written has something as a reference or something that is said somewhere. So त्यस्तो चाहिँ गर्नु हुँदैन कि offhandedly मैले केही पनि एउटा loose statement चाहिँ दिनु हुँदैन. And now that you have written 2 books, I have to be even more careful what I am writing. Because now you are on the public case,
So you have a responsibility about how you present yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe not presenting an artificial image, but then
No, not at all, not at all.
the best work that you
Not
can
at
put forward.
So what you feel like when Arundhati Roy, Arundhati Roy wrote that book, Ministry of Utmost Happiness. Read the book. It's a contemporary history of India. It's a fiction, but you exactly know what she is talking
What
about.
is
It's just that.
So it's been really. I've been having fun. It's been a really interesting conversation. I hope, the people who've been watching this. Hopefully, there's a lot of people watching this. But I hope that the audience has been enjoying it as much as I have. Right, and we are going to continue with this conversation. For now, we are just going to take a short break. Right, and in part 2 of this conversation with Mr. Satyadeep Chhetri, we'll be getting more into his thought process, his work, his future projects, and also, his advice to up-and-coming writers. So stay tuned for part 2. We come to the end of part 1 of Point of Podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Today's episode is powered by Eklabya Institute of Management, one of the premier hospitality institutes in Siliguri, providing hospitality excellence since 2015. They are now offering a 2-month barista course. For further details, click the link given below. So welcome to part 2 of Point of Podcast, where I am in conversation. That's me, Loden Lama, in conversation with Mr. Satyadeep Chhetri. And we've been having a lovely conversation so far, and we've touched upon a lot of different topics, and it's been really fun talking to you, sir. And once more, thank you so much for being with us today. And
I have to say that I've never been questioned like this. Even I'm finding it very. It's also a self-exploratory journey for me. Trying to.
We were just talking about a lot of things, I know, on the ride over, and I think one of the things that you spoke about was the importance of understanding yourself. Because just now you spoke about self-exploration, and understanding yourself. Who are you? That understanding is, I think, very important to the artistic process, right? So, तपाईले पनि, how does this, exploration of self, how does that lead you into your journey?
के हुन्छ नि भने many a times, it's not like, you get up early in the morning, भात खाओ, काममा जाओ, फर्क, खाना खाओ, सुत. But during that process of that entire day, you meet a lot of people. You sometimes talk to them, sometimes observe them, and then you try and figure out that where am I standing, today, I remember this movie just came out, 12th Fail, recently. I watched that movie. I'm a big movie buff, so I heard the picture, and then I started discussing with a lot of people, and then few of them had watched some, and most of them, some of my students and youngsters, they said that, oh, we got inspired with that. I said, good, but the thing is that, did you realize that there is a lot of rigor behind that? If that person has become successful today, we offhandedly say, oh, Mark Zuckerberg, oh, he's a university dropout. Bill Gates was thrown out of the school. Oh, Isaac Newton not accepted. How many? Today, our dream, everybody says like, oh, I want to get into IIT, or I want to go to a medical school. If I ask them, can you name number of IIT grads who made it big? No. So we tend to somehow crystallize our thoughts or our ideals or goals just basing upon few people. There's a guy in Salugara, not name him, he may not like it if he's hearing this. He was a truck driver. In the last 11 years, today, he's got a fleet of tankers, trucks, JCBs. A hand-to-mouth guy made it big. For me, that is also achievement. He may not be Mark Zuckerberg, he may not be Steve Jobs, but he's made it big. त्यो हाम्रोमा पनि छ नि. People say, हाम्रोबाट चाहिँ किन IAS, IPSहरू निस्किँदैन? या त यस्तो नि, अरे, is IAS and IPS only the job? Or we say that हाम्रोबाट किन professors निस्किँदैन, किन inventions हुँदैन? But then there's other part to it, is that look at where we are coming from. I know few people who are there in States or in Europe, and they're doing very well, but come back to their parents who might have given birth to them in a tea garden. अझै पनि त्यो डोको बोकेको दाग चाहिँ आमाको त्यो अहिले पनि उसमा हुन्छ. So we are in this process where we tend to, we should not limit ourselves, but then we should also know that पुग्नु त छ नि, मलाई मार्क जुकरबर्ग त हुनु छ नि, त्यसको पछाडि चाहिँ how much of pain one should go through. You want to be a Shah Rukh Khan, or you want to be a Nawazuddin is a classic example. Irfan was a classic example. 30 years they have toiled. So हामीलाई चाहिँ इमिडिएट सक्सेस चाहिन्छ क्या यो सेल्फ एक्सप्लोरेसनको बेलामा चाहिँ इफ वी रियलाइज वाट इज आवर इन्ट्रेस्ट वेयर वी आर हेडिङ टु वाट इज आवर इकिगाई इफ अल दिस कम्स टुगेदर देन आई थिङ्क we will reach where we want to be. Okay, now that even India is opening up, lots of startups coming up, so this has become now a genuinely global world.
You know, again something came to mind. You know, my father told me this thing. He had read it somewhere, but he told me this small story, a short example. He said this to me when I was in school, and he was trying to encourage me, trying to teach me something. And so he said, you know, you look at a duck, on the lake. It looks so still and so serene. You know, it's so peaceful. It looks like the duck is just floating by, you know, not doing anything. It's just floating by, and you think, that duck has it easy. But then you look below the surface, that duck is paddling like crazy. You know, his flippers are all over the place, trying to just to stay afloat. And that I think serves as a very good example, way of looking at how our process is, our work is. You know, often we were just speaking about it. Often we look at something and we say, very easy. Armchair, we become armchair experts. Which is good, to have this idea that I can also do it. But then it should also come with the recognition that behind this product, there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Yes. Recently I came across, Facebook feeds around, sponsored feeds. Suddenly I got a sponsored feed saying that give us a recipe for the next burger, and that was I think one of the burger joints, a renowned chain. And I thought, that what's wrong with this person? I mean, all these people, they've lost ideas. When you fall short of ideas, you're looking for ideas outside. That means your creative team is not working enough. Today, I see a lot of bakeries, home chefs, etc. opening, and they say, "Chaleko chaina, chaldaina." The rigor kahan cha ta? Chalnu ko lagi ta you need, if you are baking a good cake, as I said, 556 hogi. So you should know 100 ways of not making a cake. Only then you will make a good cake. So त्यो rigor आउनु पर्यो. आज people हाम्रो तब generally we find that they're good singers, suddenly they want to just record a song, and then they get depressed saying that YouTube ma like it chaina. I would like that person to watch that, see, have I put in my 100% in that video? If you have put in, then be sure that someday down the line it will be liked. So instant gratification has become our problem. Your exploration much, we have to know that if it doesn't work this way, then there is something wrong.
Keep at it.
Yeah. So I remember when I wrote my book, I gave it to my wife, and she read it. And then what happened also was, I was not getting publishers for 3 years. Probably the story was very strong. Probably it was not politically right, because this is the first book on Gorkhaland, novel written in English. Patsung was there, but Patsung was of course translated. So that time she told me one very important thing, and which I'm thankful to. And she said that if you don't get a publisher, then think that something is still not okay. Your first acknowledgement comes from the publisher. When that publisher accepts your book, that means there is someone who is ready to put in his or her money on your work. As soon, if अरू त म गर्नै सक्छु नि, but still sometimes like self-publishing was a route. I could have done that, but then I waited for the first approval, and the first approval always comes from the publisher that your book is good enough. So then you feel that okay, there is a second person outside my farm. But this thing only when you give birth to children, some people ask, no, whom do you like, your son or your daughter, or if among the two, kula man parcha ya teen char jati jana cha. For a parent, all of them are like your kids, no. You like everything that you do, but the acknowledgement always comes from them. So you have to have both critical and this one appreciative. No? So someone accepting itself means so your explorations also afai garnu parcha, and you have to get into the habit of getting rejected. That does not mean that you are incapable. It only means that you have not put in your 100%. Tetyo. I mean, that I think it's a big learning for everyone.
Keep working at
Yeah, people say that अब नानीहरु खै यो त म्याथ्समा राम्रो छैन, साइन्समा फेल हुन्छ. Why? Have you put in your 100% to pass? And a person who can make music can also will understand. If you boil water, vapors will come out. But if you do not understand that when I write my answer, because if the question is what is vaporization, and if I cannot write that, then that is my problem. Right? So, I mean, exploration चाहिँ आफूले आफ्नो चाहिँ गर्नुपर्छ. एक त what is your strength and also your weakness. Your threat and this one is a different thing, but you have to know your strength and weakness. If I'm not good at it, means either I have to put in a lot of effort to get it, or I can say that okay, I'm not doing this, I'll do this. Maybe you're good at something else.
I think this very interesting perspectives that you're providing, I think it also stems from the fact that you've also worked with Doordarshan.
Oh yeah, even in college and all that, do give some talks on careers and all that.
Yeah, I think that is also something very important, that a lot of youngsters coming up, coming into their own in this world, reckoning with forces beyond just the family and the comfort zone that they are in. So that's also, I think, something very important to keep in mind. Okay, how do you move forward? What are the challenges in front of me? So Isma, how you worked in this?
See, there are two parts to this. If you have to answer your question, there are two parts to it, and this would be highly professional from a career counselor side's view. One is first, either you have to be headstrong, that I know, or I would want to be this, so for that I will prepare myself for this. So if you want to be a doctor, you very well know that you have to take up science, number one. So to take up science in class 11 and 12, you'll have to do your physics, chemistry and biology. So that is the exam which you have to sit for your NEET. This is so you have already created a boundary for yourself, and that is good actually. You have created a boundary, it's not an open world. So I happened to go to one of the schools in Gangtok, and then some of them asked me, okay, you have talked only to people who know, so what about us, we 40%, 50% walas? Sweet guy asked me. I said, the world is for you. They've already limited themselves in the boundary. The rest of the world is yours. But it's a very wicked world. It's so very difficult that ultimately everybody will be, having the same stature, quality, money, if you slightly work for it. Important चाहिँ के छ भने, like बाहिर जो बच्छ, if you do say a normal graduation or whatever, that is just your baseline. Now the world is for you. So either you join someone as an apprentice. If you are good at photography, don't think that you know everything about it. Join a photographer and become, learn lessons from him. I know a lot of filmmakers who used to do that. If you are good at, say, cooking, or you have a passion for cooking, join someone in the restaurant and don't think that it is below your dignity to work there. Go and see the rigor that goes inside the kitchen. It's very easy for us to khana time mein aaya na. No, go inside the kitchen and find out what's going on there. There's another world that's happening behind that. So everything has a process. and either someone locks themselves in that boundary. I want to go into hotel management, so I'll prepare for a certain exam. If I want to get into IIT, I'll prepare for a certain exam. So your boundaries you have created, now work intensively in that boundary. Or I want to sit for UPSC, you have created that. Okay, determined, I'm going to UPSC. So what do I need for UPSC? I need 2 subjects for UPSC, and I have to do my general studies well. English. यति त गर्नु पर्यो नि, गर न. For children, those who are listening to this, or parents who are listening to this, I would just say that class 8, 9, 10 देखि नै त्यो जुन चाहिँ verbal reasoning, त्यो analytical questions, mathematical reasoning, त्योहरू चाहिँ सानैदेखि नै गराएको राम्रो हो. क्योंकि any exam that you take, say you want to sit for a UPSC exam or a bank PO exam, or any of the competitive exams that is there, or a CAT, management ko लागि, or a LSAT if you are sitting for a law exam, यो चाहिँ सबै exam को लागि same हो. सबै exam. So once you prepare that, you already are prepared for 11 or 12 exams, right? अर्को चाहिँ general knowledge. Now general knowledge is nothing. I mean, keep reading. I mean, early scrap knowledge is very important, right? So keep gathering that, and don't forget, don't forget things. So whenever you get anything anywhere, you never know. I mean, if you saw that movie Who Wants to Be a Billionaire, remember that? Yeah, Kaun Banega Crorepati ko, that Slumdog Millionaire. So you never know when. So I always tell people, sir, how do I improve my general knowledge? I said, go and watch Slumdog Millionaire. Because all his answers were based on his experiences, Never forget that.
And that's, I think, a very interesting point. All his answers were based on experiences.
Yes.
So experience is often the best teacher that you can have. Because you spoke about it. If you like cooking, have the courage, to go to a kitchen.
First, assist your mother or your father who is in the kitchen. Then you will go to a bigger restaurant and cook, no?
Yeah, I think that comes with the idea of having the attitude to learn also. And that's also, I think, very important.
And the best of the chefs have not come from grad schools. They have come from their cooking ways, So, if you go to some of the Southeast Asian countries like Bangkok, or see the presentation on the road, I mean, the food on the street, I mean, it will beat any 5-star hotel hands down.
I think a lot of these places, I think Vietnam, Singapore, a lot of these places, the street food is actually Michelin starred. They're actually Michelin starred.
Yes.
Street food
yes,
places.
They beat big 5-star hotels hands down.
So, I mean, it just goes to show you, if you've put in your 100%, you've done the work, you've done the best you can, wherever you are, it sounds very cliched, somehow things will work out.
Yeah, I mean, since we're talking about momo, go to a 5-star hotel and have the momo there, and have somewhere in Darjeeling, go say, I know you're a tharo line, go and have momo. You'll know the difference. Yeah? I mean, so that is where what I'm saying. You have to know what you're doing, and if you are at it, you will get it. You have to be at it 100%. I mean, as you said, bursting out from inside to write a book. Sometimes we force ourselves to write poetry. Sometimes we force ourselves to write a prose. Sometimes we force ourselves to write a music. No. I was reading this Shankar Mahadevan's book, where that story Ma, that song, from that famous Amir Khan movie. And
Tarism in Perth.
Yeah, and actually it was made for someone else to sing. But Amir Khan said that, no, you're going to sing this for this movie, you are going to sing it. And look at the wonder it has done. So, you never know. I mean, these people, if you think that once in a while they suddenly come out with a nice music, no, it's not. They're at it 24/7. They're at it 24/7. So, it has to disturb you from inside that, Saki alumna class to, Saki alumna graduation to, attitude chaman, I mean, but then don't expect much from life. If you want to expect the world, start working. And it's not that you have to खटेर हैन खटेर त उनीहरूले पढ्छ नि त्यो मैले भने नि त्यो बाउन्ड्री जसले लगाए नि उनीहरू चाहिँ खटेर पढ्छ यो बाँकीको जो 99% छ outside, 1% मात्रै हो नि त, that's only 1%. Those who have created a boundary of joining a IIT or a medical school or a, whatever. The rest of them are outside. So what? The rest of them are living hand to mouth? No, they're doing exceedingly well in life. So it's just not that. I mean, today we talk about Mark Zuckerberg, we talk about Bill Gates, we talk about Steve Jobs. But if his team was not there, if his marketing team was not there, if his production team was not there, if his, the branding team was not there, product branding and all, would they have reached where they reached? We don't know them, but they're equally being paid very well. Right? So I feel that, there's nothing to be disheartened. I mean, your dream may be such, but then there are, today you say, oh, Mahatma Gandhi brought in freedom, Jawaharlal Nehru brought in freedom, or XYZ brought in freedom. No, it was the entire people of India who brought freedom to India. They were leading. We accept that. All of us cannot be that. But what about those foot soldiers? You don't go to a war you don't war win alone. You need the entire battalion, And it's not that the battalions are not doing. Everyone is putting their soul in it. You know why? Because they are in the firing line. Everyone loves their life. No one wants to die. That is why they put in their 100%. So if you don't want to die, then you have to put in
your 100%. Yeah, that's very well put. That's amazingly put. And I think one thing that I took from this conversation today is a recognition of the sheer process.
Very important.
That goes into the creation of anything, whether it is a work of art or whether it is just everyday life. You must value the process that goes into it.
I'll tell you one thing. I salute these children, especially our children from this area. We live in a very sheltered atmosphere. We are among our own people. You'll find 10 people who know you, or they know you, you know them, right? But then they suddenly go up, say, to Bangalore or to Pune or to Delhi, Bombay, and they study there and all that, living all by themselves in PGs, in small apartments where they take together. And people say, त्यहाँ गयो के चाहिँ पढेर आयो उसले life सिकेर आयो. He knows that the water trickles from my tap at 7 to 8. He will do all his washing and cooking at 7 to 8. He's learned life. The other part, anywhere. You study graduation in Darjeeling or in Siliguri or in Calcutta or in Bombay, it's same thing. But what you get is that life. How to cross a road. Our people who go to Delhi, they're like just zapped by this whole thing that I have to cross this road. So many cars zooming, That itself is, how to cross a road is also a learning. How to bargain. Life experience. And it teaches you a lot. Living in groups. What's the politics in that group? Who's trying to, pull you down, or who's trying to push you up? Who's your good friend? Who'll stand by you? Who will not stand by you? So many things. I find it like when people किन पढाउनु भएको यति पढ्नुको लागि त्यहाँ पठाउनु भएको मैले कहाँ पढ्नु पठाएको लाइफ सिक्नु पठाएको एक्लै बाँचेर. Learn first, live your life alone, then you will know what it is to stay alone. So let us not undermine the process. Everything is a learning.
Everything is a learning process. It's very well put. Speaking about process, I think you are also in the process of working on some projects.
Yes.
So तपाईँको your plans, projects को बारेमा, could you give us a short glimpse?
Yeah, one I'm translating. I cannot name the book. Yeah, of course, but then I'm translating one that's like tearing me apart, because as I said, my second language in school was not Nepali, it was Hindi, so it is tough. The second, of course, I'm working on a pulp fiction. Probably again it would be the first one from this area, a pulp fiction coming out from this area. I would just like to try my hand on everything, And there is one research which is still going on the mass exodus of the Bhutanese refugees, how overnight you're simply told to leave. So what was this process? What was this thought going on? So watching their videos, talking to many of them, like scattered across the world, just to learn about the stories, their pangs, and also from Bhutan, what are the stories coming out. So, yeah, that would be a fiction, but these are a few things that I would love to see it happen. I mean, I don't know how many would be successful. So many things. I want to do a murder mystery. I don't know. Yeah, probably come out with so many things. Yes, it is like it's a process, but then yeah, because you have kept a few. That will keep me going actually. I have this. I don't have to sit and think about the next project because I know the next project is ready for me, and I have to start my work. So. And it is all this process happens together. It's not that when I'm doing translating, I'm just doing translating. No, I'm also listening to stories. I'm also working on my other plot. So these are things that will happen.
So, yeah,
That's the creative part.
No, that sounds very interesting. I mean, and I'm sure many people listening as well will be looking forward to whatever you come up with. Right, so that's certainly something to look forward.
Yeah, next year, but next year you'll have a book from me by early next year. That is for sure.
Looking forward to that then. Speaking about people watching, there might be a lot of people who maybe want to follow in your footsteps, maybe want to be a writer, want to whatever it is, people who are just looking to do something with their life. You as a person who's gone through certain experiences, would you like to speak to them?
Yeah, I mean, people often ask me that मैले यो लेखेको छु, म यो publish गर्छु. I said, good. I mean, you're writing a story. एउटा चाहिँ एकदमै इम्पोर्टेन्ट हो कि हरि चाहिँ गर्नु हुँदैन. As I said अघि पनि, first your work has to be acknowledged by someone who's ready to put in their money. So that is very important, especially in English. अब नेपालीहरू चाहिँ जेनरली चाहिँ अहिले अब हुँदैछ कमिसन वर्क्सहरू एन्ड उहरू, बट जेनरली चाहिँ उ नै हुन्छ, आई मिन सेल्फ पब्लिस नै हुन्छ. One of the most wonderful books that I've seen. But don't get pulled down. I mean, what I started writing in my when I was 45. के को हतार छ त जिन्दगी, त्यो भनेर फेरि 60 वर्षसम्म पर्खिँदा चाहिँ भएन. बट राइट वेन यु वान्ट टु राइट. Don't write because you want to be seen on Instagram or whatever. And then take your time. People, ultimately, if it is, and write what you feel should be written. And it should not, don't constrict your thoughts and ideas. If a writer does not see a part of himself in that book, then that book is artificial. You have to see a part of yourself in the book when you are writing, a prose especially, Poetry is another very important thing. Is the best part about poetry is, it's a very refined, crystallized, and I really respect poets because if I have to write something which goes to about 500 words, a poet may write the whole 500 words in just 50 words, So crystallized. So it's tough. So start with short stories. I think we have a lot of short stories in our villages and in our gaon, basti, even towns now. Start with that, because with that, and if you can, like, Gorkhaland Diaries happened with many short stories coming together, by the way. So all these ideas were different. It's just that one fine day I sat down to link all of them together, somehow have the protagonist getting linked. And someone told me one day, I mean, how did you link all those events with the character? That is the craft. That's the craft. The rest, stories are there. So, I mean, a simple story. so which I have written and I've sent it also. It's just about like oranges, people place is very famous for the mandarin oranges, but the crops fail every year. So I happened to go to one basti one day, and we were walking down that road. I met one dajo over there, बुढो मान्छे. अब नानी योपालि पनि भएन हौ राम्रो सुन्तला, अर्को पालि त पूजा लगाउनु पर्यो. That's the story.
That's the story.
Now, then I sat with him and then discussed a lot of things, which is there in my the orchard भन्ने एउटा story छ, त्यसमा छ. Yeah. So, very, I mean, हाम्रोमा कथा छ क्या, but somehow we are not putting it together, or we're not probably writing. We, as I said, no, we go to convent school and our son, Murakami and Shinjuku airport, railway station, and some Tokyo. No man, life is here. If you want to write about your place. That is the best place to start. Yeah. Or if you're traveling, write a traveler. Write a traveler. You go to Nepal, or you go to Delhi, or you go to Thailand, or you go to Tokyo. Write about your experience. Don't write what they think. Write what you think about them. Then it becomes original.
Write what is you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I've come to believe. The best of writers don't write about... They will write about India, but they'll write it from their perspective. The jewel in the crown, the book. Right, written from someone else's, their perspective. My perspective may be different. And that is where I like, again, Arkanarayan. The Malguri Days, the Guide, and all these books, It was writing stories from his perspective, the Indian perspective. So that is why his books did well. I still find him one of the most foremost writers in our history of English in India. I mean, such simple writing, but such intense writing. I mean, I don't know how many can manage that. Arkanarayan. If you've not read it, they should read it.
I think it's been lovely talking to you. I think we are coming to the end of this. Is all the time we have. I wish we had more time, but it's been lovely talking to you, sir. And thank you once again for being with us today, and thank you for just giving us your time and going on this journey with me.
Even I enjoyed it. I never thought it like that. Your question prompted me to answer few questions in a different way.
It's been fun, and I really hope that if anyone is listening, I hope people are, but if anyone is listening, you may not like everything that we've spoken about, but certainly, if nothing else, then value the process, and I think if you can begin to do that, you're already starting out well.
Exactly. I mean, your father or your mother, whoever's in the kitchen, cooks food, and then you say, you to meet up and esma noon besi bhaecha. Now think about the process, right? From buying up that vegetable, cutting it, washing it, cooking it, and you are denying it because there is a little bit of difference in the salt. Like noon besi bhaecha, tara thikai cha.
Talking about valuing the process, now a bunch of plugs coming up right there. So you see me drinking this lovely tea. This lovely tea has been sponsored by tea and refreshments for our podcast has been sponsored by Mugen Rap. Okay, so Mugen Rap is this really lovely place in Salbari. If you're ever in Salbari, do drop by Mugen Rap. Tell them that Point of Podcast sent you, and I'm going to keep calling them out until they finally send us some raps or something to munch on while we do the podcast. Okay, so selfish plug over here. We also, in between, you've been hearing some beautiful background music, and that has been provided by Musoka School of Music and Fine Arts. So thank you to them, and also for logistic support. The logistic process. For logistic process, we would also like to thank Chogu Dewan. Okay, and in case you have any needs for tours and transport, you can contact Chogu Dewan as well. So, like Sir said as well, it's a process. It's a process, and there's a lot of different people, behind the scenes working to make anything, to create anything, and this too is a collaborative process. So thank you once again, sir. It's been lovely having you. And with this, we come to the end of episode 3 of Point of Podcast. This was me, Loden Lama, with Mr Satyadeep Chhetri, signing off for episode 3. Look forward to episode 4. Thank you once again.
Thank you.